Are we live? Did it happen? Did we do it? Did we win? What do we win?
Yay.
I see us. But I don't see... Oh, well. Whatever. Computers are mysterious devices. But boy, lose your power for... Last night when I was doing my QA, I warned people that it was snowing really hard and I could lose my power. And the power held, and then it went at 11:30 last night.
Oh, wow.
And has been out for... came back on around 2:30. So, down for like 14 hours, which sucked.
Some of those new electric SUVs they're making, you can power your house. You can use them as a backup generator.
Yeah, I mean, if you just got to be willing to spend $100,000 on a...
Yeah, I know. If you want to buy a $100,000 truck, buy essentially the price of another house.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is funny. Like when your power goes out and you're surrounded by snow, so you can't really leave because we've got like a foot of snow. You then it's a dark time, You're like, who am I without the internet?
I lived in Maine and Alaska for many, many years. So
yeah. And so I just
without the internet,
some video games on my Steam Deck. I read a book. I napped. Ate cold food and waited for the power to come back on.
We had Northern Lights last night. I don't know if you had them up there. I mean, I don't get them.
Well, we got snow, so I have no idea.
Oh, it was cloudy. Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of people in the UK, higher latitudes, were shooting out photos of them. So there was a bit of aurora activity last night.
Yeah, our place is equipped with a generator, or can be equipped with a generator. So I just haven't gotten a generator yet. But we've got a little pad. We've got a plug on the outside of the house that I can plug in, and we've got a different electrical system, like a trimmed down version that's just when we're only on generator power. But
those kind of battery backups have come a long way. I think if I lived rural again, I would build something like that into it.
Yeah, I think that's the long term is to build is to actually get one of those backup battery systems that'll last you for a day.
Yeah.
But it's tough, right? Because like normally when you live rural, you have a wood stove to keep yourself warm. And we purposely, no, we're not getting a wood stove. We're going to go with a heat pump.
Get a pellet stove. Those are pretty awesome. I had one the last place I lived in.
Maybe. Yeah. The heat. I mean, I got a mountain of wood. I mean, I could cut down wood all day and do, but actually I'm amazed. We have because we have a concrete floor and we have an in-floor heat. It only lost a couple of degrees over the entire time period, and it's like -2 outside. So the sort of the heat capacity, the insulation is really good in this place. So I think we could probably go for 2 days before temperatures start to kill off our plants. So
it's weird, like in Spain, the little village I go to, and they're part of the European Union, they're first world, but a lot of places there, they still primarily heat with wood. That's their primary.
A lot of places around here do.
Yeah.
And that was my childhood, was cutting wood and starting fires. That was responsibly.
It's not the most efficient way, I will admit. It's fun to do, but it's when we were getting our place built and we were talking to the designer, like, do you want a fireplace? And we're like, absolutely not. No, I take no joy from a fireplace. Fireplace just looks like a plate of work to me. Yeah, a lot of that heat just goes right up the flue and out the chimney. So it's
absolutely.
It's fun for a while, but
all right. So we're gonna get this started, but I want to warn people that we are shorthanded tonight. So we've got just the 3 of us. We can make it if we try, and so we'll get through the stories that we've got. There's probably going to be some other stories. We may just start babbling for a while on some stuff.
But once we're sort of reached where I feel like we've covered the news and we've run out of steam, I'll probably cut things a little early. So
my brain is full of space flight. So
yeah, who knows? I always say that, and then somehow we end up talking for the whole show anyway. So who knows? So, all right, let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Weekly Space Hangout for Wednesday, November the 30th.
Last day of November.
30th.
Yeah. Yep. I'm Fraser Kane, publisher of Universe Today, and this week we're going to be talking about Artemis, as well as all of the Cubesats are supposed to come with Artemis, as well as the upcoming SpaceX launch to the moon and more. We're also going to be covering all of the things in the sky to watch for 2022, and then a bunch of other stories depending on how much time we have and how much knowledge we can bring to the table. So let's meet my co-hosts. We've got Dave Jenkinson. Hey, Dave.
Hey, I'm here on stable internet for a change in Bristol, Tennessee. In a closet, but on stable internet.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Oh, you've got like a strange ring around you. I don't know if is that.
I noticed that I'm kind of pixelated around the edges.
Yeah, it's like a. Yeah, it's like
I'm using the laptop camera, so I don't know what I've always used this camera, but
yeah, I wonder if there's like something around. I don't know if people are seeing this.
Yeah, no, I see it on.
Oh, you see it as well. Okay, all right.
Little Hollywood Squares setup.
And we got Pam Hoffman. Hey, Pam.
There, I'm in a weird place too. I'm actually visiting family in Ohio right now.
Oh, very cool.
And they've got bad internet. You've got a delay.
It's a little dicey, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see what happens here.
All right. We'll work around that as well. So, of course, before we get into the news this week, I want to give a huge shout out and thanks to our good friends of the Weekly Space Hangout crew, our friends, our fans, our executive producers. If you want to join this amazing community, go to wshcrew.space. All right, let's get into the news. Cosmic Seekin saying, cover some questions in the chat if you have some spare time. Yeah, we can do that too. Oh, your halo has disappeared, Dave.
I noticed that. It just popped right to high res.
Yeah, you fixed it.
Oh, cool.
Whatever you were doing, it fixed it.
I didn't interfere. That's what I did. I just let it.
All right. Dave, give us the update on Artemis.
Yes, Artemis 1 I finally launched. I believe you guys covered it last week after much anticipation. Finally launched from the Kennedy Space Center early in the morning, like dark early in the morning, like seems like every NASA mission wants to do. And it is currently in a distant retrograde orbit with no crew this time. This one is totally, unless you count the Munikin Campos in the with the radiation dosimeters on him and in various payloads that they put out there with experiments. But it's been bringing back some pretty amazing images. They've been just going live at random times. Yes, I shot this when I was watching this, and I'm like, oh, it looks like the moon is actually going to occult the Earth from their vantage point. This video here is sped up. It's about a minute long. Well, actually, this GIF is like 12 seconds long, but it took about 15 minutes for it to do this. And they panned the camera right at the end. I was like, it's going to go right behind the moon. That's too cool. That they're at far enough vantage point right now that the moon is actually larger than the Earth as appears from the spacecraft. So I got my video capture going on my laptop as soon as I saw that they were going to do this, and just caught this quick little it went viral for a while on Twitter too. What's left of Twitter anyway. And you can see that they're looking at the far side of the moon. And if you go out tonight and you look, you notice the moon is at first quarter phase. They launched right around new moon. And there was actually kind of a rhyme and reason for this, is they didn't want to go through the shadow of the moon itself with the solar panels. There was a reason that they used the launch geometry in the launch window that they did. So you can kind of see that they're both there at the same phase. I was kind of brushing up on my far side lunar geography, looking at all these images that they're returning, because I was like, you know what? I've totally forgotten any of the objects. At star parties, you're not usually showing the far side of the moon objects off, but it's kind of neat how there's not all the mare, and there's a few really massive crater impact basins on the far side. But it's kind of nifty. We're seeing a view that we never see from this vantage. And of course,
how is the spacecraft doing?
It's doing pretty good. As far as I've heard, they haven't had any glitches. This mission was just meant to test the Artemis 1 rocket and the Orion module out and everything else.
They had one glitch. The communications went down for a few minutes a couple of days ago. Yeah, and it was a little bit of a heart attack, and then they figured it out and brought everything back online. But
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, they were having a drop in their communications to
this
the
was
Orion.
This was an all-up test of the Orion capsule. Everything made it together. The SLS, because you remember Orion did launch on a ULA Delta 4, I believe, 2018, 2017. It's been in space before, but they haven't.
Not this Orion, but
not this one. No.
Yeah.
And of course, the big test is they're going to come back on a very high-speed re-entry. I believe faster than even the Apollo ones when they come back. December 8th, I believe, is when they're coming back for splashdown. This is all automated. They're not going to put crew on, I believe, early
the 11th. But
the 11th, okay.
Yeah, I think so, but I could be wrong.
This mission was shorter. This window necessitated a shorter mission than what they had originally planned to do. But I don't think Artemis 2, I don't believe, is going to go till early 2024 now, if that. I mean, it's the launch cadence isn't more than once a year.
Yeah. I've heard Artemis 2 is probably going to be sometime late 2024.
Yeah.
And Artemis 3, then we're looking at 25 or maybe even 26.
Artemis 3 will be the first crewed landing on the moon.
That's right. That's when the humans will land on the moon. And the other thing that we need to really have synchronized with this is the completion of the human lander from SpaceX, from Starship.
Yeah.
We still haven't seen, and we'll talk about Starship in a little bit, but they have to build and refuel and fly out to the moon and demonstrate an uncrewed landing on the moon. And then
don't tell Jeff Bezos, because I'm sure he's still mad that he lost.
Yeah. Well, he'll get a different contract. Contract.
Yeah. There's some rumors around NASA right now. I'm seeing talk about that we may see a crew selection for Artemis 2 and 3 somewhere in the next few months. I've seen some talk in some press conferences that we might see the names of who's going to land on the moon next if they do these. This is just total speculation I've seen among science writers. They changed the verbiage a little bit about who is going to be the first to land on the moon in Artemis 3. And I remember somebody at one of the conferences brought up the question, does this mean that there's been a crew selection? And they wouldn't answer it. But I could totally see it in possibility while everybody is fascinated with Artemis right now, that maybe after Artemis 1 comes back, we might see a crew selection.
Yeah. I mean, it is moving inevitably forward at this point, especially now we've got the successful launch of Artemis 1, a proof that the Space Launch System works beautifully. I mean, it sets $4 billion on fire every time it launches, but it does launch beautifully. It works like a charm.
But it was supposed to be cheaper because it's been made out of shuttle hardware.
Yeah. But with this one returning, NASA has actually already ordered Orions for Artemis 6, 7, and 8. They recently put in the orders for that. So at this point, NASA is quite. They've definitely doubled down on the current plan. So until Starship actually delivers and proves that a fully reusable 2-stage rocket system is a better way to go, to see this platform for a while.
It still depresses me that they're only doing a launch maybe every year or every other year. Apollo was a much faster cadence,
right?
Yeah, and sometimes they had a couple every year with Apollo.
Yeah. So I'm like, really? This is and I don't know. I haven't heard about Gateway. I've heard talk about that Gateway may not be a thing, which is too bad. That was my favorite part.
Originally, Gateway was going to be Artemis 3 or Artemis 4. No, that's right, Artemis 4. So originally Gateway was going to be, they were going to start constructing Gateway on Artemis 4, and there was going to be, I think, 4 launches that were going to build it. But NASA recently extended their contract with SpaceX to buy a second landing of the human lander, the Starship human lander for Artemis 4. So now that's been kicked back. And so now we're probably going to see the Lunar Gateway start to be constructed from 5 above.
And Capstone is up there testing that near lunar reticular orbit right now.
Yeah, the Capstone mission arrived about a week ago and went into that orbit. And that was a bit of a nerve-wracking episode because
they almost lost Capstone.
They almost lost contact with it, and it was tumbling, and they were able to still have enough power seeping into the solar panels. They were able to get control, right it, and have it do its final trajectory burn to get into this new orbit. And the purpose of Capstone is to just pathfind and make sure that this orbit that they want to use for the Lunar Gateway makes sense. It's a very clever orbit. Like one of the things that I've found recently quite exciting is some very clever orbits are being used.
This sort of orbit gives them access to the polar regions where they want to land.
That's right. Yeah. And yet you don't have to be in orbit around the moon. You can sort of sweep in, deliver your astronauts, sweep back out. It's a very clever orbit. And we see even with the Orion mission right now, it's a different orbit than they did with the Apollo missions. Like in the Apollo missions, they went into orbit around the moon and then came back. But with this, they're doing this flyby, and they're kicking out into a very far orbit, takes them farther away. Everyone says farther away than any human-rated spacecraft has ever been. And then comes back.
I was just going to say that sparked an interesting discussion because all the space nerds started thinking, the Apollo 10 Snoopy module didn't land, and it's in solar orbit right now. So it was it had humans on it at
Shut
one
up,
time.
nerd. Yeah.
And then what about the Tesla Roadster that got shot out there? It's like,
is that human rated?
It's human rated for not just for space, but not for space, but
human rated for Earth. Yeah. Well, I'm sure lots of spacecraft would be human rated for Earth that are on a long, you could sit on top of the Voyager on Earth.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah. So I'm not sure I would really buy that. Cool. So what comes next? What's the next sort of big milestone that we should be looking forward to with
the big Artemis? Thing is when it comes back and does re-entry. That's probably going to be a big deal to actually see them. That's one of the key things they want to test with this before they put humans in it.
There's one more flyby of the moon.
Yeah, not as close as last time, but
and they're going to use that to sort of drop themselves back down towards the Earth. Yeah. And then, as you said, the re-entry is faster. Oh, they're doing something kind of clever with the re-entry as well to bleed off the velocity. Are they doing one skip through the atmosphere?
They might. I know Chang'e, one of the lunar sample return China had a very unique kind of atmospheric skip re-entry because that came back from lunar orbit as well. So it had a very high velocity return. Might be something like that.
Yeah. It's such a long mission. It's strange that it's been. I've done 2 of my news episodes talking about this mission. I'm about to do a 3rd one. I'll probably get a 4th one, right? Like it's just like there's always been Artemis 1. There will always be, but actually that's not true.
Yeah.
All right, Pam, why don't you tell us what we're going to be able to see in the night sky?
Well, if you don't have clouds like I do here, there are some kind of cool things. It's not like eclipses, but it's good stuff. Like there's 2 meteor showers in December and 1 in January. I've got a couple of activities I want to tell you about, including night, but their website has some issues. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it will be back up in time for the next project. Then there's some interesting conjunctions to look for, kind of like 3 things together. But I'll talk about those in a second because there's the 2 meteor showers in December and 1 in January starts off with the Geminids. And that's going to be December 4th through the 17th. The peak, however, is December 13th and 14th. And it's a waning gibbous. These are available all night. They source from Gemini in the south. And there's a lot, 75 to 120 an hour. That's like huge. Of course, it's in December.
Right.
The comet is 320 and Phaethon. Phaethon, is that how you say that?
Phaethon,
The
I
moon
think.
is Phaethon. Okay. The moon is 21 days old, so it's big, but it's waning. I would say get out early since they are available all night. And then after a while, the moon's just going to be kind of in your way. It's going to be big and it'll be there the rest of the night. Then we've got the Ursids. That's going to peak December 22nd and 23rd. So just in time for your big holiday Christmas celebration. These aren't as big deal though. 5 to 10 per hour from Earth and you after midnight. However, it is a good moon. It's almost a new moon. This is kind of the best time to get out and look at things. Their source is 8P Tuttle. That's a big name, right, Tuttle? And
Yeah.
Quadrantids, they range December 7th, 10th. Sorry, that's peaking though 3rd and 4th of January after midnight again. These radiate from Draco. Their peak rate is 25 to 100 per hour. That's reasonable. You're not going to be standing there waiting forever. Their source is 203 EH1. The moon is 12 days old. It's a waxing gibbous. The full moon is on January 6th. It could be kind of rough for that one. So I mentioned some activities. The 5th round of Nominate a Student with Perseverance is open, and that runs through December 19th. Their awards announced January 24th. And this is for 6th through 8th grade students in the United States. Public, private, and homeschooled children are eligible. There's some pretty cool awards, too. There is a link for that. And I just do a search all the time. Let's see. I think I put in Perseverance Student, and I find it. So then we've got the Globe at Night. That project begins December the 15th, and it runs through December the 24th. In the Northern Hemisphere, you're looking at Pegasus. In the Southern Hemisphere, Grus. And each of these projects lasts for 10 days. They do say to keep going out and collecting the data. You want to compare these to what's on the website. This is a really great citizen science project, and you can make a real contribution. I don't know if you remember with Mike Simmons, he said this is very important. Now, hopefully, this website will be back up. And I haven't seen any targets set up for 2023 yet. They usually kind of have them, on the site already. So I think they're just having issues with their website. Hopefully, we'll get that back in order. So some things happening. November 30th is the last quarter moon, and Mars at its close approach tonight, basically. But the best time to observe during the new moon is December 23rd and January 21st. The biggest moon makes it harder to observe. December 7th, that's the full cold moon, and January 6th of 2023 is the full wolf moon. And I talked about some interesting conjunctions. They're pretty much at the beginning and the end of December. The middle is kind of quiet. On the 1st, Jupiter and the moon are in conjunction. On the 8th of December, Mars is in opposition. 20th, Mercury is at its greatest. I didn't check which for long elongation. So it's going to be in the one or the other. Do we know?
It's at dusk. West? It's at dusk, yeah, so it's east.
Dusk. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Also, that's the solstice.
December
24th. Yeah. Go ahead.
We have all the naked eye planets in December in the evening sky. Speaking of, we have Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. So for the entire month in the evening.
Oh, very cool. Okay. Yeah, I've just got the conjunctions here. Like December 24th, Mercury, Venus, Pluto, and the moon are in conjunction. Of course, 3 of those will be pretty easy to see. December 25th is Christmas. 26th, Saturn and the moon in conjunction. On December 29th, Mercury, Jupiter, and the moon. Another sort of 3 things together, Mercury, Jupiter, and the moon. And then there's some good stuff late January, but I'll talk about that next year.
Yeah, that occultation of when Mars is at opposition next week, the moon is going to pass occult it for North America and Europe, so it's going to be a big deal.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
A lot of people are going to be able to see it.
I've been out and looking at Mars every night. It's quite bright.
Yeah, so
very easy to see.
That's the night of the 7th through the 8th of, so next Wednesday. So it's going to be a big deal. I think there's only a dozen or so occultations during a full moon century. I'm writing up an article about it, so I'm kind of researching it. So that's going to be it's actually going to miss me here, just barely. Cool. The only place that doesn't see it is the little corner of Southeast US. The rest of North America and Europe is going to see the entire event. So
wow, okay. Cool. I mean, like right now, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars are up every night when it gets dark. Yeah. They look great.
Great.
Yeah, when I did all the events for this, I just realized when I did all the events for December that it's like, oh, we have all the evening planets, and I took a look. It's like, so I put it in there. It's like, yeah, it's like we have every naked eye planet, like from Mercury to Saturn in the evening sky, so you can see them all in one sky at once right after sunset through most of December.
Oh, that'd be really cool. Thanks, Pam.
Well,
all right,
I'll be watching.
Let's talk about the CubeSats that flew with the Artemis mission, because they haven't been as successful.
Yeah, it was kind of course, this was a very secondary mission. The big thing was to test SLS itself. That right there is an image of, that's actually one of the ones that didn't go on Artemis, one that was supposed to. That's a lunar flashlight. There's originally going to be 13 missions. 3 of them didn't make it for various technical reasons. One of them was NASA's lunar flashlight mission, but 10 of them did go. And there was some concern when they were doing all these delays. And I remember it got brought up in one of the news conferences because a lot of these are battery powered. They have solar panels, but to activate their solar panels, they need a little bit of battery push. And there was some concern out there that maybe the batteries had died from SLS going to the pad, back to the VAB, to the pad, back to the VAB. They did say on the last time they went out that they did give them an opportunity to charge. So it looks like some of the missions were at least partially successful. About half of them made it. Right now, what they got signals from that were deployed, the Italian Space Agency's Argo moon actually is doing quite well. It sent back some images of the moon. So that was kind of cool. That was a joint Italian Space Agency NASA mission. BioSentinel, that has space yeast on it, is actually doing quite well. That went out for a solar orbit. They got signals from the 2 Japanese missions, Equius and I may slaughter this name, Ominotanashi, was the lunar lander that they were going to do. Apparently, it looks like they got a signal from it, but it was tumbling, so they lost that. I saw it there. It's definitely not going to go for landing, most likely. So, unfortunately, that would have been cool if they would have got a landing out of it.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
I know. And Team Miles, they lost one of their technology demonstrators. One that was, I hope they get recovery on, was the Near Earth Asteroid Scout.
Yeah, this is the solar sail that's going to go and explore an asteroid.
They even commanded it to open its sail just as a last-ditch attempt. And there's been some amateur scopes with large scopes and some public observatories have been trying to track it down because it should be about 14th, 15th magnitude, which is faint, but in range of a large amateur scope. That they're trying to at least see if they could image it. The sail, I believe, is 9 feet by 9 feet, I believe, something like that. So it's, it might be 9 meters by 9 meters. I think it's a little bigger than that. But I haven't heard of any successful recovery on that. It's too bad because that was going to go to a small near Earth asteroid.
Yep.
And it was going to actually rendezvous with it. And, again, these were all just secondary payloads that got slapped onto. They were in one of the staging rings between 2 of the SLS stages, and they deployed shortly after launch. So it seems like out of 10, we got about 5 that are out there. The one I've seen the most of is Argo Moon, the Italian space agency one. I've seen some pretty nifty images of the lunar far side they took with that. Seems like the Italian space agency is doing well because they had Leica Cube on board the DART mission, and they got some images of that too. So they're doing well with these little small sat missions that are starting to. It's interesting now. besides putting small sats in low Earth orbit, you're seeing lunar missions and even interplanetary missions. Like there was the Marco Mars Cube 1 sats that went with InSight that flew by Mars that it deployed. Those worked fairly well, and those went out into solar orbit. So it's interesting that you're seeing more little small sat missions deploy with the big missions and going out there and doing some, and it's good to get another vantage point. It was handy with DART that we had Leica Cube to give us another vantage point of the impact, and those sorts of things. So,
yeah, the Argo moon sent back some pictures of Earth, which looked fantastic, very much like the blue marble picture.
Yes.
And so if you do a search for that, I don't think we have them prepared, but they look fantastic.
The moon ones look pretty nifty too. I always like seeing the far side because again, I find it's like, oh, there's a part of the moon I totally forget's even there because I don't usually observe it, but it's kind of
we can't see it. We can only see the near side. Yeah,
I believe it was Luna 3 in 1959, the first Soviet mission that flew by and produced the really grainy images of the far side. But that's why you've got like the Sea of Moscow, and you've got a lot of the names are Russian on the far side. The Russians got there first, and they named
because they discovered them, so they get to they get to name a bunch of them. That's funny. Okay, so a couple of other pieces of news. I think those are all the ones that we had prepared. Did you want to talk about the Lunar Flashlight mission as well, Dave?
I can real quick because that was supposed to launch tonight, and right before showtime, I checked SpaceX's Twitter feed, and they delayed. This is with Hakuto R. There's 3 missions on board this, actually. It's an interesting launch. Hakuto R is a company called iSpace out of Japan that has got a lander demonstrator that's going to go to the Atlas crater. It's going actually, these missions, Lunar Flashlight's going to go in that same capstone kind of orbit when it gets there. And they're taking a very long, they're launching with SpaceX on a Falcon 9, going to geostationary transfer, and then they're going to do that long drifting kind of orbit and go out in a polar orbit like capstone and take 3 to 5 months to get there, unlike the Apollos that got there in a couple days. Yeah. But Hakuto R is the primary lander that's going with them. This was a Google X Prize. Remember that about 5 years ago. This is one of the Google X Prize.
So was the Beresheet, which also
that crashed. Yeah, that was Space IL. These are 2 alumni from that Google X Prize competition that ended in 2018. But some of the companies, they were already under development, so they kept going. So iSpace is one. They may be the first one to successfully get to the moon. If they,
when you think about it, you've got the Beresheet from Space IL. You've got the ISRO lander that failed. Now you've got this Japanese CubeSat lander that failed.
Yeah.
So that's 3 moon landing failures in a row.
Yeah.
So now we've got another one that's going now. Let's hope
Hakuto R can do better.
Yeah.
And there's some other plans down the pipeline. Astrobotics and Intuitive Machines want to do commercial landings.
Yeah.
It was this year. It got bumped back to next year. They're going with SpaceX, and I believe Astrobotics is going with ULA when they get their newer Falcon rocket up.
Yeah.
They want to go with that. But there's also Lunar Flashlight is going with this, and that's a NASA mission. Another small sat about this. It's a 12U CubeSat, I believe, so it's about the size of a suitcase. It has 4 laser reflectometers on it, and it's going to be looking to map water ice in these permanently shadowed areas of the moon as it goes into this polar orbit in areas that there could be in situ resources for future astronauts to use. So that's an interesting mission. And the UAE, United Arab Emirates, has a small rover named Rashid that is on there as well, that's going down with the Hakuto R lander. It's a very tiny 4-wheeled rover. It's got a few instruments, some cameras on it. They're going to do some lunar dust experiments. Actually, that's
pretty cute.
So
cute little rover.
So if the mission gets going, it could be an interesting mission to watch.
Yeah. I mean, like, I just hope they make it. I'm getting sick of really cool ideas for lunar landers failing.
I know.
I want to see a lunar lander succeed. So.
China's done really well. They've done lunar sample returns, and we've talked about really to do it from Mars is just scaling it up for landing on a bigger rock, basically. So
yeah,
China could beat us to sample return
Yeah, I mean, at this point, China's done well. I'm trying to think how many safe landings they've done on the moon now. 4,
I believe 4. Yeah, because there was
and 1 sample return.
Chang'e 5 was the sample return.
So. Yeah, and this is a continuous path to sending humans to the moon. They've laid out their plans now, detailing all. They've the next 3 Chang'e missions. I think they've mentioned 6, 7, and 8, and I think by 9 is humans.
They have a permanently crewed space station that they've kind of just gone it on.
Yeah. So that was the piece of news that I was going to bring up. I think we're done with those. So just a couple of other pieces of news that I think we'll probably wrap up tonight's show. So the Chinese latest crew of 3 taikonauts just arrived at the Tiangong space station. And this is the final crew that's coming to complete the building of the station. And so they've got a couple of some science experiment racks they're going to be installing on the station. And with that, says the Chinese Space Agency, we're done building the station. So then the next step is for them to use the station for multiple years, perform experiments, etc. And then in tandem with that, they're going to be continuing on their lunar program. But 2030 feels like the kind of the time that we will see people from China land on the moon.
They look like they're going toward a permanent.
Yeah, so that's the thing. They're absolutely going towards a permanent lunar base. And
but their station even is keeping a rotating crew, whereas the first few stations they put up, they did more expeditions, like they did a week or 2, and then it was mostly vacant. And it looks like now that they've got the Tiangong station built, that they're keeping a permanent rotating crew, keeping them supplied. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And it's a different philosophy. Like with NASA, their plan is we're going to be using the Lunar Gateway as our permanent base near the moon.
Yeah.
And the Chinese, the plan is we're going to build a station on the moon, and we're going to just send rotating crew to this station and have it be permanently inhabited, just in the same way that they have the Tiangong permanently inhabited. So it's a different philosophy.
And NASA announced about a year ago, probably 2030 or so, we're going to see the end of the International Space Station. So there may come a time when China has the only inhabited space station in orbit. So
well, or a private space station.
Yeah, I know. I think Blue Origin and a few other companies have ideas for smaller, like the inflatable modules. I forget the company out of Nevada. He wants to do there's one of them on the internet, Bigelow. Well, they want to do the inflatable modules.
Right. They're out of business.
Okay. Because they put one module on. Oh, they did put. I hear that.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, actually.
They did put one module on the space
station.
Someone
will post it in it, but it's his name. What's it? I'm sure Pamela's screaming it right now because she always she always likes the mission as well, and was shocked to hear that they filed for bankruptcy as well. Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was we got another test of the there you go, Bigelow Aerospace. There you go. We got another test of the Starship Super Heavy booster. And this is, of course, the first stage booster that's going to be going with the Starship stack. In the end, this thing's going to have 33 Raptor 2 engines, and it's going to be fully reusable. It doesn't have any way to land. It will get caught by the big launch platform called Mechzilla. And so we got a test just yesterday, 2 days ago, and they did 11 engines for 20 seconds. So this was a fairly long test of these Raptor 2 engines, and we're inching towards the full 33 launch. So last time they did 10 rockets firing, and now we've got the 11. And so, according to Musk, we should see there's like one more test that he wants to do, and then we should see an orbital test. I don't buy it.
Well, SLS beat him. We always wondered who would go first.
Yeah.
I always think it's funny that there are people outside Boca Chica that that all they do is watch that launch.
Yeah, Lab Padre, Spaceflight Now.
When
Yeah,
the horn goes, when the 10-minute horn goes off, because these aren't space broadcasts, these are just amateurs off site that are like, they have cameras ready. If the horn goes off, that they're like, something's going on Boca Chica, and they start streaming it. So
no, there's, I mean, in many cases they have live streams just going of the rocket day in, day out. You could just any day you want, you can just go and just see one of these rockets on the pad as they're doing their tests. So but yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully we will see a test sooner than later, because as we mentioned earlier on, the Artemis missions need this thing to work to provide a lunar lander for the mission. So all right, I think we're going to wrap things up at this point. I want to give my co-hosts a chance to shamelessly self-promote what they're working on and let us know where we can find out more. So Pam, what are you working on, and where can people find out more?
We are still broadcasting live every Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific time, of course, midnight here where I'm at today. The Everyday Spacer YouTube channel, the Facebook page, and some guests. December 2nd is Rob Watson, and December 9th is Mark Wagner, and we welcome anyone who has done something interesting involving exploration, science, and astronomy. You can be our guest too. That'd be really cool.
Sounds good. Dave.
Frequent contributor, Sky and Telescope Magazine, Universe Today, author of the Universe Today's Ultimate Guide to Observing the Cosmos, and our Deep Sky Field Guide as well. That came out 2 years. It's hard to think. It's 2 years ago. It seems like it just came out. And the next things I'm probably working on are Mars opposition and occultation I talked about. I'm probably going to do a post for Universe Today, if not like probably early next week, right as people start getting excited about it. So
cool. So obviously I'm Universe Today and all the things, and we had a really fun 200th question show this week where I invited all of my YouTube space friends to answer questions from my audience. So we got Scott Manley and Sabina Hossefelder and Isaac Arthur and John Godier and a bunch of other people. So it was a lot of Marcus House. It was a lot of fun. And if you want to come and check that out on my channel, definitely do. It was a lot of fun to wrap up 200 episodes and get everybody's help answering questions, because I asked for really hard questions and then I just passed them all along to them. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us this week. Super fun. A lot of space flight news this week. But thank you to everyone watching on YouTube and on Twitch. Thank you to my co-hosts. Thanks to Pamela for engineering behind the scenes. Thanks to Nancy Graziano for organizing and herding all the cats. I'm sure this week was an anxiety-inducing one. But we will see all of you next week, and then one show after that. And then we're off for 2 weeks over the holidays. So 2 more episodes before we break for the holidays. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.